Welcome back to week 3 of our series, The Golden Rule is Love. We've been digging into Romans chapter 12 verses 9 to 21, and so far we have seen that love is connection, and that to have real connection we need to be honest, devoted to one another and value each other more than we do our own pride and self-entitlement, and that love is active. That love serves the body of believers. Love is generous with those in need, and love is spontaneously and warmly hospitable. This week we are going to be looking at love is sensitive. Now, Brits don't really like this idea. We have stiff upper lips and get a grip. We tell people to pull their socks up and to get on with it. But in this passage we're going to look at, we see that to love one another well, we need to be sensitive to each other. So let's get stuck in. Firstly, love is empathetic. Have you ever had one of those days when everything's gone wrong and you see a friend and you just want to get it all off your chest? Now, how you feel after doing that is very much down to how your friend responds. Your friend has a choice. Your friend is either a fixer or a listener. Now, the fixer, as the name suggests, they try and help you fix things. They launch into how you could do things differently next time and encourage you to see the bright side of life. They often have wisdom from their own experience to share with you. What can you do to pick yourself back up? It'll all be better after a good night's sleep. Now, the listener, they do exactly that. They listen. They allow you space to feel the things that you're feeling. They sit with you in that and experience the emotions with you. As you recount your hideous day, they might not have anything to say. Now, verse 15 of our passage in Romans 12 says this: "Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn." Now, this shouts out empathy to me. Now, there is a difference between empathy and sympathy. A lot of people think that the difference is whether person A has shared the same experience as person B, so they really know how they're feeling. But doing Kintsugi, Hope, has helped me to understand that empathy is actually about the way that person A listens to person and responds to person B. Brené Brown, back to her, she says, empathy has no script. There is no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, without judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of you are not alone. That's a gem, isn't it? Did you notice that word connection was in there again? Sympathy, on the other hand, tries to find a solution or point out a silver lining. Sympathy creates disconnection. A listening friend is an empathetic friend. Now, if that is your tendency, then keep going. However, if you are a fixer, like me, you need to make a really concerted effort to do empathy, to hold space, to just be there in the moment, to experience the emotions that they're feeling and to let them know that they're not alone. In verse 15, the Greek word translated with those who, as in rejoice with those who rejoice, is actually the word meta. And that means with in terms of physical space, but also in terms of time. It can also be translated as we're behind. We're behind them. We're there for them. And the time connotations also carries The idea of continuing to be with them in the future. We are with them in space, in time, we are present, and we will continue to be with them. I know that they say that love looks like something, and I said it in the last session, but sometimes that something is just sitting and listening and sharing an emotion over a cup of tea with someone so that they know they're not alone. Love is sensitive. Love is empathetic. So rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. As well as being empathetic, love is also mindful of others. In verse 16 it says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. So let's take that first bit. It says live in harmony. How do we do that? Well, the original Greek sentence actually gives us a clue, though it does sound a bit Yoda-ish. Are you ready for it? It says, toward one another minding. The key word here is minding. It means to think, or more specifically, to direct your mind to other people. We might say to be mindful of. It can also mean to observe other people or to care for other people. And all of those things are very intentional. We need to be aware of others, but it goes deeper than that. To live in harmony means that your actions and words take into account your mindfulness of others. It's more than just think before you speak. It's more like, I know that person and I know what they're going through. How is what I am going to say going to impact them and their whole person right now? Or it could be the reverse of that. Wow, they just spoke to me like that. What is going on with that person that they might speak to me or act like that towards me? Why did that just happen? Love is mindful. And this one is very linked. Love is self-aware. There is a very clear instruction in this verse to do not be proud. The ESV says, do not be haughty, which is actually a direct translation from the original Greek word. And the word haughty means to think highly of yourself. And we see it again at the end of this verse. It says, do not be conceited. And conceited means to think of yourself as more wise than others. It says it twice in one sentence. And that means it's probably important and we should pay attention to it. But hang on. Haven't we already talked about pride in this series? Back in video 1, it was the opposite of honouring one another in verse 9. Pride has a massive negative impact on our relationships. When we think we're better than others or wiser, that breaks connection and causes conflict. So, why is it mentioned here in the same sentence as being mindful of one another? So that when pride creeps in, as it will do because we're all humans, we can put it back in its place. Pride causes disharmony. And managing your pride is your responsibility. And the first step to doing that is to be aware that it's there. In Kintsugi, we talk about pulling back from a situation to help us to get some perspective. We go through a bit of a model. It's called the STOP model. And it goes like this. Stop. Take a breath. Observe your feelings and thoughts and what is going through your mind. Pull back from the situation and get some perspective. What else is going on? And then proceed. You have to be aware of how you're feeling and how that's affecting how you're behaving before you can fully understand the rippling effects of your behaviour on other people. And when you become more self-aware, you can be intentionally mindful of others. We've all been there. You're tired, You've had a long week, you've got loads done, but you're absolutely shattered, you're ready for the weekend, and then someone emails you to let you know that you put an extra comma in the third sentence of the second paragraph down in the newsletter on Monday, and you really should know more about this because you are the church administrator and you should know how to do grammar properly. Oh, and that really presses your buttons. You might not have been in that exact situation, but you get the idea. Now, my emotional response and the emotional response would be to tell them straight exactly what I think of them. How dare they say something like that to me? And to me of all people, can they not see how hard I'm working? That's the emotional response. But the self-aware response says this: step back, take a deep breath. What am I feeling right now? I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling defensive. Why do I feel like that? My work has just been questioned and criticised. Pull back and get some perspective. Right now, I'm really tired, and that's always going to make me react in a more emotional way. I'm going to be far more easily triggered when I'm tired and I'm ready for a rest. I have evidence of what I've done and how hard I've been working this week. I'm angry now, but I'll calm down in a few minutes, maybe a couple of hours, maybe a day, but I won't be angry this time next week. Also, if I make a scene right now, I'm going to have to deal with the fallout of that next week. Also, why is this person pointing this out? What's going on for them that they feel they need to nitpick to me? Do they feel insecure? Perhaps they're tired and they're not as in control as their tongue as they should be. How can I behave in a way that will bring peace rather than strife? And when I've gone through all of that, then I can proceed. Now, the more regularly you practice this, the quicker you go through it. And that means that rather than analysing a conflict after it's happened, you can stop yourself before it happens, which leads to peace. And that is why many translators have translated this sentence toward one another minding as live in harmony, because you are mindful of yourself and of others. Now, we're never going to get this right all the time. We're not perfect. But thankfully, there is grace that covers over all the times that we slip up. And grace leads to reconnection. So it's okay. But this verse also gives us a really helpful antidote to pride. And that is being willing to associate or to hang out with the lowly. That could be translated as the humble. In possessions, in spirit or mood, in societal position. It harks back to verse 10, seeing the value in others, which surely can only be intensified when we're being mindful of others. Paul has already outlined in Romans that we are all spiritually lowly because none of us can match up to God's perfect standards. So perhaps he's reminding us and saying, remember, you're not perfect either. So to sum up, love is sensitive. Love is empathetic. It identifies with others through forging a connection built on listening and on sharing their experiences. Love is mindful of others. It takes them into account. It notices them and it cares for them. And love is self-aware, because in doing so, it helps us to be intentional about making harmonious choices.